Deep within the Faron grasslands, there lies a dungeon that Link has to explore to obtain the sacred flame of Faron. This dungeon, protected by the proud race of the Kikwi and the water dragon Faron, hides behind the waterfall of Floria Lake. This same lake was mentioned in Breath of the Wild, which means that it is the same old lake from ancient times. Faron the dragon was once given the role of guardian to this flame by the goddess Hylia herself long ago. Faron lives together with the different tribe that once protected the lands of Proto-Hyrule, called the Parela. These creatures live inside the sea caverns within Lake Floria, and they are the servants of this water dragon. The Parela are the first primitive form of what becomes the Zora many ages later, even though they do not look anything alike other than being swimmers. Their arrogance for swimming stayed though, as they seem to mock Link constantly when they tell him his human form isn't really all too great for being a good swimmer. These creatures though do have another leader that is much smarter than the rest of them, called Jalif, and seems to have coral on her head that signifies as a door key. Within Hyrule Historia, it was said that the original plan was first to design creatures that look more like the Zoras that most of the Legend of Zelda fans recognize, but it was told to the developers of Skyward Sword that it was better to go for a more primitive design, and so the idea was eventually rejected, which gave us the Parela. During Link's quest to receive the first flame, Faron was attacked by the demon lord Girahim, and she got wounded in the process during his evil invasion. She managed to fight them off and paid a little price for it. She fell wounded and therefore asked Link to find sacred water from the Skyview spring. This has to be done twice, as for some strange reason the water's power was diminished. Link eventually manages to restore her full power, and this leads our hero to the Floria waterfall. This waterfall protects the Ancient Cistern that we will discuss and talk about today in this video. The Ancient Cistern, an awesome dungeon for me at least, as I love water temples. Yes, I really do. And the theme of the dungeon is instantly given away the moment you see the design of it. A huge fish designed as the entrance of the dungeon, an obvious indication of a water temple, but there is an amazing story behind this dungeon which you can see a glimpse of the moment you walk in. First we determine what a cistern actually is. A cistern are underground or hidden rooms designed for a large storage of water, and are parts of a large water system, which makes sense as it is around Lake Floria. The word itself came from a Greek word called kist, which means basket or box, which is also very interesting to me because in my native language Dutch, we also call a chest or a box a kist, except we use it for random items and not for water stuff. The entire room we first come to explore has tons upon tons of symbolisms, with the biggest one being the Buddha statue that we see in the middle of the room. I'll get back to this later. We first have to check out these symbols on the walls. We can find water drops. Yeah, water drops, you know, tears. Large pink flowers on the walls that appears to be lotus flowers. And if they are purple, I apologize, because I'm also half colorblind, so sometimes it's annoying for me to see colors anyway. Spades figures. More fish acting like little water funnels. Water lilies that are placed here on purpose as they have a connection, and was definitely placed here for that specific connection only. This whole dungeon was inspired by Buddhism, as the lotus flower and the white water lily resemble important symbolism contributing to that religion. The white flower represents things like rebirth, pleasure, wellness and peace. But there's more to see here as well. Underneath the water surrounding the room are two hands that are part of the statue in the middle of the room, and Link is supposed to close both hands to unlock one of the doors. Most of the time the hands are placed in ways for Buddha to meditate, but I couldn't find any specific styles of meditation styles where both of the hands are closed, so there could have been a made up one as a puzzle design for this room. What is interesting in this room too is the red bird flying around. In my last video, The Fire Sanctuary, I spoke of the Vermillion birds, a Chinese bird that is one of the 4 symbols of the Chinese constellations. This bird could resemble the Greek phoenix instead, as in English this monster has the name of Phoenix, which is obviously a reference to the Phoenix. Now there's a hidden story in this dungeon that makes it so incredibly interesting and most likely make this dungeon the top dungeon of the whole game. The Buddha statue hangs above the lake because it isn't in the realm of the living. It is in the realm of the gods that Buddha resides in. The story of the dungeon is coming from a 1918 short story by the author Ryunosuke Agutakawa, which was first published in the children's magazine called the Akai Tori. This story was called the Kumo no Ito, or the Spider's Thread. This story was based on a multitude of different other stories made by the other authors that Ryu read, and one of these stories was called the Fable of the Onion. The story goes that Buddha, once upon a time wandering around his paradise, which was the heaven or the gods part, which you could see as a separate realm of the gods, when he stopped at a lake. It was filled with lotus flowers, which corresponds to the lilies in the temple, and why the Buddha statue is in fact above the lake. Between these lilies, however, he could clearly see something awful, the depths of hell, as the water created no reflection, but more of a doorway between two different realms. Within the Ancient Cistern, there is a large underground area that acts like a sewer, but the music in this area changes and everything goes dark and eerie, as the sewer system acts like hell within the story of the spider thread. Buddha, looking through the lake, saw a man called Kandata. Kandata was stuck in hell as he was a cold-hearted criminal, and it was because of his actions that he had to stay there. But this criminal had done what good deed throughout his entire life before he perished. Before he went to hell, Kandata explored a large forest, and during his travels he encountered a spider. Kandata, noticing this spider, decided for some reason to not kill it at all, and this action was seen as a good little deed. Buddha eventually noticed that Kandata decided not to kill this spider, and therefore felt a little compassionate for him. When Link travels through the Ancient Cistern, he finds the way towards the underground of hell, and a demonic statue of an Oni can be seen there. Its claws stretching forward, spewing cursed water, chains of the tortured are hanging around the walls, and the undead demon bokoblins are ready here to devour our awesome hero. It is this area that mimics the story of Kandata, as Link is Kandata himself, and he travels through hell to escape it. The story, however, turns a little different compared to what happens in the game, as Link eventually finds a cave-like room filled with bones of the dead, the ultimate end of hell itself. It is here that a rope can be found, but this rope is important to the story of the spider's thread. While Link starts to climb the rope, a bunch of cursed bokoblins appear, and Link tries desperately to climb this rope to his safety. During this climb, you can clearly see that the higher he climbs, the lighter the room becomes. This is because the light resembles paradise, where Buddha resides. During the story, Buddha decides to create a rope, which is the spider thread that the story is talking about. Kandata manages to find his way through the pool of blood, which we saw earlier, with the demonic statue puking out the blood, and during his escape, he noticed the rope and grabbed it as hard as he could. But the demons in hell and all the other criminals that were imprisoned there noticed the rope as well, and they also wanted to escape hell itself. Kandata didn't notice this yet, and during his climb, he realized that he was almost at the end of the climb, and started laughing in a very eerie and dark manner. This was a short-lived celebration as more and more demons started to climb the rope, and the weight broke the rope more till almost breaking point. Kandata became angry at the other demons and shouted at them, saying that the climb was only created for him alone, and that everybody else had to let go so he could escape. At this moment, as he said this, the spider thread broke down, or the rope broke down, and all the demons, including Kandata, was cast away back into the pool of blood. Buddha, however, saw everything happening as he was still at the lake looking down below. He took a deep breath and realized that Kandata couldn't ever be saved, as he only cared for himself and nobody else. Buddha then left the lake with a sad feeling, but continued his journey anyway. It's an amazing story which created my favorite dungeon in the game. The whole Buddha design is awesome and it was really thought out this time, but we aren't really done yet with this dungeon. On top of this Buddha statue lies the boss room of the cistern. This was chosen to be on top because at the highest peak lies enlightenment, or the all-knowing knowledge, which some people know as the third eye. It is here that we encounter my favorite boss of the game, called Ancient Automaton Koloktos. This boss, corrupted by Girahim, the same theme that this dungeon has, the theme of something good, and then corrupted by evil, was a guardian machine to protect the sacred flame. This machine, however, has multiple arms and multiple weapons called chakrams, an indication of another mythological inspiration of demons called the Asura. The Asura aren't exactly good or evil, but in between. They can be fighting for the good side or bad side, depending on what side they choose to be with. That this fight happens in the large lotus flower room design could technically mean that Link and the machine are fighting in a total different realm metaphorically. It is just a room, but the lotus flower is a sacred flower, and the room itself is one, meaning that the room protects an ancient treasure that the guardian must protect. Koloktos also has a red heart in the middle of its body, which is its heart, but at the same time corresponds to a red jewel. There is a mantra that tells "praise the jewel" in the lotus, so it could mean that the machine carries the jewel and without it, fails to exist anymore. I also strongly feel that the boss is a depiction of the figure that tried his best to escape hell, but couldn't, so his only way for repaying his sin was to fight Link and reach salvation after the battle has been lost. It is also very strange that it is a machine of all things, something that doesn't really match with the design of the dungeon itself, just the theme. And who built this machine to protect this sacred flame? First we need to take a look at the item that we can find in this dungeon, the whip. This item acts the same as the older hookshot from previous games, as you can grab things or pull switches with it. But the item can also be used to defeat the boss of the dungeon. The item also had a different design at first, as the first idea was it to have a skull on it instead of the lotus flower that came later. I noticed that there is a pattern with all these items. They all seem not to belong to their respective dungeons, and that they were not created by the same inventors that created the dungeon itself. The beetle, for example, was created by the robots in the Laneriu Desert, created by and for the Thunder Dragon. The whip, with the same style of design, was most likely with the ores of the timeshift stones created in this exact location, the Laneriu Desert. Which makes me question, are the robots responsible for the creation that was the Koloktos? And I'd say yes, they are. It was a machine created to protect the flame with modern technology that the Proto-Hylians didn't possess at the time. And by this discovery, I end this video by stating that the next video is going to be about one of the most mysterious places the Legend of Zelda has ever shown to us, the Laneriu mining facility. So I want to thank you all for supporting the channel. I appreciate all the comments, suggestions, feedback and all the lovely people that still believe in my content. Because I see your comments and everything. So feel free to subscribe if you like what you saw and heard. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye.